Hello and welcome to the official release of episode 1 of Hexes and Soldiers. My name is Jason, and that was Dimmu Borgir with Eradication Instincts Defined from their album Death Cult Armageddon. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Jack Champ Dempsey, a couple shout outs to JT, Brad, my brother Brian, and everyone else who has given me their warm support. It is greatly appreciated. As I said in the last episode, downloaded Audacity, acquired a headset and mic, and mistakenly thought I would be off to the races. But as it turns out, owning Windows Vista is a problem. I needed Windows 7 or Windows 8, and this thing could have gone a lot smoother for a number of reasons I won't get into. But needless to say, I overcame, and here I am yet again. So, let's see, I think I'll start out with the top 10 games of the week. And sitting at number 1, not budging, not moving, it is permanently, apparently, lodged. And the number 1 spot is a game that I talked about in the last podcast briefly. I will not mention it here because it is not a war game. So we will skip that, act like it is not there, and go right to a new number 1, Paths of Glory. World War I game. I've heard wonderful things about this, read good things about it. I own it, but I have not played it. Like many games in my collection, I just have too many to tackle. And Paths of Glory, yeah, it's supposed to be a great game. I've yet to play it. Number 2, Combat Commander Pacific. Obviously, the Pacific Theater for Combat Commander. And heard good things about this as well. I do not own it. I have not played it. It has piqued my interest from time to time. I may dive into that at some point, but I'm not sure when. Number 3, Here I Stand. Number 4, D-Day at Omaha Beach. Number 5, Hannibal Rome vs. Carthage, a game I just sold and never played. Number 6, Combat Commander Europe. And number 7, Napoleon's Triumph, a fantastic game that I own and have played. I can't recommend this game enough, even if you're not a fan of the era. It is beautiful to behold. The mechanics, once you've gotten a hold of them, are fairly easy to master. Just get this game, okay? It is a wonderful game. Let's see. Next, Virgin Queen. We got Commands and Colors Ancients, which I do not have that. Heard good things about it. I'm more of a Commands and Colors Napoleonics fan myself. Played many scenarios with the Russian Army expansion set. It is good stuff. And then we've got number 10, War of the Ring, the first edition, as opposed to, I guess, the newer second edition. Again, it's a game I own, have not played it. Sadly, we have, for all you Advanced Squad Leader fans, ASL is 12th, so we need to do whatever it is we can do to bump that up at least into the top 10. That game should be in the number 1 spot. I've always said ASL is the chess game of war games, so let's see what we can do as far as getting that at least into the top 10. And actually, right behind ASL, we have Up Front, another wonderful game. I am own and am experienced with both ASL and Up Front. ASL in particular is probably my all-time favorite war game system. So, and I'll get into that later on in this podcast, and probably will go back to it and touch on it again and again in every podcast from here on out. I think the last podcast I also said I'd get into briefly, at least, how I got into this hobby. And I called it a hobby, but really, this stuff is it's an industry, and more, it is a lifestyle for a lot of people, including myself. You know, when you say the word hobby, it promotes visions of, I don't know, collecting stamps and pasting them onto a book. No, this is so much more. This, like I said, is an industry and a lifestyle, and it can just overwhelm and enrapture you. So who do I have to blame for my introduction into this foray? Well, that would be my brother, who I gave a shout out to earlier, Brian. I remember growing up, a young fella, and he would come over on weekends because he lived with his father and I lived with our mother, and he would bring with him for the weekend a war game that he had acquired, and he would probably bring a different one every time he came, and I would watch him sit and read and digest these scary, to me at the time, rule books. I couldn't imagine how anybody would subject themselves to that kind of torture in order to get out what they got out of it entertainment wise. And just sit mesmerized and watch him in front of a game laid out. It just seemed like so much was going on, like an entire world just sitting there before him. And I just remember thinking how cool that was. And got into it on my own, uh, initially over my head. I think I had games like Flight Leader and Central America, and I had to have been no more than 13, and thought that I could learn and play these games, and my lord, stare at that rule book with glazed eyes and sigh and hang my head and think that I was intellectually challenged for not being able to grasp the subject matter. Uh, yeah, pretty much just discouraged myself completely until I found, let's see, a game. I was in Washington with my grandfather, staying for a week or two, and where he lived, you could step outside and see the mountains. It was beautiful, but nothing to do. And I thought, well, I'll order a war game. And this was back in the day where you actually had to call on the phone. I think I called Avalon Hill because it was a victory game. And I wanted Ambush, that solitaire game system, Ambush, which was paragraph driven. You move along each hex, and then each hex you move into, you check and see if you have activated an enemy, and go from there. And based on if or how many you activated, set them on the board. It's a wonderful idea, but they didn't have it. They were sold out. I was brokenhearted. I wanted this game so bad. But what they did have was Battle Hymn. Now, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I have never been a big fan of the Pacific theater. I was always more European theater. But I gave it a shot, and I said, okay, I'll order Battle Hymn. And this game shows up, and I sit down, and I give an honest effort and try to learn these rules, which I do, and proceed to never look back. This game was the gateway game for me, and it only led to bigger and badder things. Just a wonderful game, and designed specifically to be played solitaire. And I don't know how many people exactly play their games solitaire. I think quite a few. I know there are some groups out there that get together and do that whole thing, and I'm all for that. We don't all have that luxury. As well, we're not all wired like that. When I play a game, I suffer from the worst ADD. I will sit and play a turn or a half a turn, then leave, come back, leave, come back, leave, come back. I very rarely sit for 2, 3 hours and play. I guess I could if I had to, or I trained myself, but I've never been like that. But yeah, this game is specifically designed to be played alone, and let me tell you, brother, it works. It is a probably one of the top solitaire games out there that you can play and get a lot out of. So battle him. Uh, what else did I get into? Let's see. I got Storm over Arnhem and messed around with that. Enjoyed that. Russian Front, I have to say, was a, just a great game for the subject matter. Relatively easy to grasp and get into. You can digest those rules pretty quick and dive right in, and you're playing. And there's something to be said for those kinds of games. You know, I like a challenge when it comes to learning something, but sometimes spending a whole day just setting up the game and learning how to play you're just not in the mood for that. You want a game you can just dive right into and roll, you know? So Russian Front, and I think I had France 1940. I had set that up, and I think played that once or twice. But it wasn't until the squad leader stuff, and here is where my heart lies, let me tell you. I acquired the original squad leader game, not ASL, but the original squad leader game. And I know they have those starter kits out now, and that's great. They didn't have them when I got into it, unfortunately. But I began with squad leader, learned that, and I got to tell you, that game, in my opinion, is flawless. As far as tactical games go, you could do no wrong. I mean, it is fantastic. But reason I bring that up, though, as well, is because that, I think, really helped me and when it came to learning the ASL system. I had somewhat of a general idea of how things worked. Now, obviously, there's tweaks and differences, but I hear people talking about how they're trying to learn the ASL stuff and they're losing their mind or they're overwhelmed, and I feel for them. But my recommendation, honestly, and I'm sure there will be plenty of people that disagree, my recommendation is grab one of those old squad leader games and learn it and play it. Not only is it fun in and of itself, it does provide a springboard for the ASL stuff. Now, like I said, they do have the starter kits, and I'm sure those are great, and I would recommend that as well, if not as an alternative. But personally, I really enjoyed the squad leader stuff, and it, as I said, helped me in being able to learn and enjoy the best game ever made, Advanced Squad Leader. Can't say enough about that game, and I wish to God that someday somebody will pay homage to that game and the players, the congregation that is the players of that game, and do a documentary, please. I would love to do it myself, but as we all know, I can barely put a podcast on the internet. Uh, Man, that would be something. But anyway, that is how I got into the industry, and me and my brother sit and talk sometimes about those days, and he'd tell me stories about how he remembers going into, back then it was Toy Chest, but it was like today, like a Toys R Us, and going in there and just seeing these games on the shelf, and it almost sounds like a mythic fable to hear that these things were actually in a store like that, and you could grab them and buy them. I think there was a bookstore like B. Dalton or Walden Books back in the day used to carry games in store. I mean, this just seems inconceivable to me because nowadays, if there are games at a store, it's probably a game store that caters to the Euro gamers and families and stuff like that. You don't see war games in game stores much, if at all. And I understand a lot of these stores are probably only open because of games like Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, things like that. Good for them, it keeps these guys in business, allows them to stay open. But when it comes to hardcore war games, and I hail from Columbia, Missouri currently, uh, in process of moving to Louisiana, which I'll get to in a minute. We have two game stores. One just opened. I haven't been to it, but I think they cater more to the Warhammer crowd, fantasy stuff. What is that? Pathfinder stuff that's out, that kind of thing. And then the old standby Valhalla's Gate, who have treated me well over the years. I've probably kept single-handedly kept them in business for a while at least with my Flames of War endeavor. And they have been known to carry some war games here and there, but I walk in there and they've got maybe three war games that I would maybe consider going home and thinking about getting, and the rest is, yeah, the other stuff. So, and I understand, you stock what sells, but at the same time, maybe you would sell stuff that you stock. So maybe if they tried getting in, and they got stuff like the Command and Colors Spanish and Russian expansion games, but they don't have the core Command and Colors Napoleonics games. So sometimes the stuff just confuses me how it's done. But anyway, hats off to them for what they've done. But as far as going into a store and grabbing a war game and going home with it, good luck. You got to go online. You got to hit NWS up. You got to go to the MMP site. You got to go to the GMT site to get, for people like us, to get what we want. And that's fine, because at least we can get it. But to hear my brother relate these stories about going in, can you imagine going into to a Toys R Us and seeing these games on the shelf? I mean, that's amazing. So with that, what do we got next? I think I'll hop into maybe a little overview of the industry itself, because I said I would do that, so I will do that. I will hold to what I have said I would do. Hexes and soldiers. You know, think about think about that for a second. The hex. Where the hell does that come from? Who came up with a hex to be used in a game, and why? Where does that get its start? I think that's somewhat interesting, if not quasi important, as it is such a integral part of the industry. But the hex comes from the Rand Corporation. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. Some of you probably are. Some of you probably are not. But the Rand Corporation is a nonprofit research and development think tank. Been around for a while. I think the government loves these guys for what they have done, information they've provided, and research. But these are the dudes that came up with MAD, that mutual assured destruction, that whole model where if somebody used nuclear weapons and the other person would use nuclear weapons and nobody would win and everybody would die, more or less. But they came up with the hex because if you look at a square grid pattern, if you move diagonal, you are actually moving more distance-wise than if you move vertical or horizontal. So they come up with the hex so that no matter which direction you move, it is equidistant from each hex, if you know what I'm trying to say. So, I don't know. There you go. History of the hex. Some little trivia there for you. Share that with your wives and family, daughter, and impress them. But anyway, Simulation Publications Incorporated, otherwise known as SPI, founded in '69, way back in 1969, by Mr. Dunnigan, the man himself. This place goes bankrupt in '82, and TSR buys them up. And I think they redid some of those games and stuck the TSR brand on the box. I have a few. I think I've got Cobra and they did a few SPI games. Anyway, SPI probably, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say best known for the War in the East game, and what is it? I think you could pair that up with War in the West and have this like as if War in the East wasn't big enough. Pair the two together and just I don't know, lose your mind because there were so many maps and counters to set up. Oh yeah, they did the campaign for North Africa game, which is probably the craziest game ever made because of its attention to detail and its scope. That is to say, the size, how big it is. Uh, the for the DAC fans, I think Africa stuff. That's where it's at. I've got DAC 2, and that thing just blows my mind. But this is back in the SPI days. They had a campaign for North Africa. I do not have that. I have not played it, but I've read about it and seen pictures. And this game even goes so far as to represent individual fighter pilots, if that tells you the size and scope of the game. And of course, SPI, known for their Civil War game, Terrible Swift Sword. Cut to Avalon Hill, founded in '54 by Charles S. Roberts. Yes, the same man that the award is named for. Uh, Tactics is the first war game they put out. And I want to say that is the first commercially available war game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I understand it. And Avalon Hill, known for their just wonderful games. I mean, these guys were the Cadillac of the industry. Really honed their games down, and you could tell it was a labor of love for them, not just a money scheme. And some of these companies go on to become the Walmart of games and just pump them out game after game after game after game. And that is good, but it is also bad because it seems like they didn't spend a lot of time on some of these games and were pumping out subpar products more often than not. But Avalon Hill, when they put a game out, you could almost guarantee it was going to be a damn solid game. And they become a subsidiary of Monarch Avalon Printing in '62, and I think they had their place right next door to the printing company, so they could literally come up with a design and get it ready, and then if they needed to tweak something, they could just hop next door and say, "Hey, we need to do this" or something. That was pretty cool. '82, a subsidiary company named Victory Games was founded, and this was for apparently the more dedicated gamer. These games were a little deeper, a little thicker, a little more thought involved. But these two were just fantastic games. The whole line, Victory Games series, was just all of them, you know, wonderful stuff. Then Monarch gets bought up by Hasbro in '98. And apparently, the story is Hasbro wanted to get a hold of diplomacy. I don't know why they had a bee in their bonnet for that game, but that is where they had their sights set, and end up just buying the whole back catalog in the process of Avalon Hill. So '94, Multi-Man Publishing, otherwise known as MMP, gets started, and they keep the Advanced Squad Leader line from the dustbin of history, as Avalon Hill didn't see much of a future in it. Um, then you got Major League Baseball pitcher Curt Schilling, who tries to buy the rights to ASL. I don't believe that happened, but what does happen is he gets introduced to Perry Koch and Brian Yost and partners up with them, becomes a third partner, and ensures that the future of ASL will continue, albeit with a Hasbro stamp on every box. Uh, When Hasbro bought Avalon Hill, MMP negotiated with them to make sure they could still keep pumping out stuff. So that is good for us. And then 2002 rolls along. MMP buys up the Gamers line of stuff. And if you're not familiar with that, the Gamers have they derived the operational combat series, the standard combat series, the tactical combat series, and OCS is next to ASL. Obviously, different scale, but as far as rule systems go, if you can only learn or have the time or patience to learn two rule systems, do yourself a favor and learn the ASL rule system. You will not be dissatisfied because the amount of stuff that you can play that's out there is endless, especially with third party people producing scenarios and expansion sets. And then the OCS system, tons of games out there, great games that you can play. And don't let the size intimidate you because a lot of these games, like Case Blue or Guderian's Blitzkrieg or Blitzkrieg Legend, which is what I'm playing currently, they have smaller scenarios and they are playable with just one person, and you won't go nuts and run naked through the streets, gnashing your teeth and pulling your hair and just losing your mind. It's stuff that can be played and enjoyed. So yeah, to reiterate, do yourself a favor and learn the OCS system, operational combat system. Learn those rules and learn the ASL rules, and you can't go wrong. So, if I could go back in time a bit to 73, which is the birth of yours truly, but also the birth of Game Designers Workshop. And that company would fight the good fight until 96. And one of the games they pumped out that I have, I'm a proud owner of, is the Fire in the East game. A big monster Eastern Front game. And if, as you listen to me, you will notice a bit of a bias because I am primarily interested in the Eastern Front. It is a hell of a historical event. Uh, Western Front, good stuff too, but Eastern Front is just brutal stuff going on, and I will probably talk more about Eastern Front stuff than anything else. So bear with me. I'll try to balance it out, but that's really where my interest is. Um, and then, of course, so you have these companies out, and the ones I mentioned are just a few. I mean, there were a ton of other little companies, and they all seem to just dry up and go away. Now, why is that? Well, I don't know specifically. There are a ton of theories. Maybe it was something that just ran its course. People are fickle, and their interest can only be held for so long when it comes to something like, I'm reading now that kids are losing interest in Facebook. What can we do? Well, you're going to have to change the name and disguise it as something new because kids want to do the next new thing. They're not going to keep doing the same old thing. It's not cool to keep doing it. So, MySpace, what happened to that? Well, Facebook came along. So I'm telling you, anybody out there that wants to do a social media page, the time is right because kids are getting tired of Facebook and they're ready for the next new thing. And if Facebook, if you're listening, which, yeah, I'm sure you are, right? You need to disguise yourselves as the next new thing and change your name because kids, their attention span is just nil, especially nowadays. It's not there. So maybe people just lost interest in this thing, and also what you get like Commodore 64 comes out and everybody just loses their mind, rightly so. And I guess game companies they run out of money. People aren't buying them. So make computer games, yeah. I guess that's where it went. And which leads me to another question. How come, speaking of computer games, we have yet to see a squad leader computer game? Now I think there was one that was created back in the day, but this thing was junk. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a decent computer squad leader game. Why is that not available? Why hasn't that happened? It won't. I don't think it would harm any of the board game stuff. People will not. People aren't going to stop buying the board game stuff because you release a computer squad leader game. I know there's Vassal, and I'm not talking about that either. But anyway, it's just curious. I think Shenandoah Studio is really beating a new path when it comes to computer games because they are resorting back to the hex encounter games and putting them on your iPad and your iPhone. And I really like that idea. Now, I'm not a computer game guy. I think I own two. One of them is War in the East by Gary Grigsby, gift from my brother, bless his heart. Computer games scare me, and they scare me because I'm afraid I'm going to like them way too much, and I do not have the money to start buying a whole new library of computer games to play while I have so many old school war games that would just, it would be like the Velveteen Rabbit syndrome. Me playing my computer war game while all these poor, wonderful, you know, bookshelf games are just sitting there hanging their heads and pouting because I no longer give them the affection that I once did. But yeah, Shenandoah Studio, and if you don't know, look them up. They're doing good things when it comes to computer stuff. But why couldn't they, like, say, get together with MMP and release a squad leader game that would blow us away? I mean, what would be the harm in that, you know? Anyway, so today, moving right along, as far as the history of this gaming industry goes, I think you can narrow it down to the big three, and I call the big three GMT, probably the biggest of the three, and then MMP and Columbia Games. Now, again, that is not probably even the majority of the market, but as far as the volume and reception of their games, people really anticipate their releases when they come out. It's I confident in narrowing it down to these three, and yeah, you got your Academy games and stuff like that. But when it comes to the amount of games that are getting put out and the high anticipation level of these companies' releases, this is where it's at. GMT, MMP, and Columbia Games. Now, Columbia Games, I think they primarily do block games, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that don't want to play with blocks. I don't have a problem with it. I think Eastfront is a fantastic block game, and anybody that thinks that block games are for pansies or whatever, get yourself a copy of Eastfront and play it. You'll be pleasantly surprised, if not blown away. Uh, MMP, of course, as I said, the people that are carrying the torch for advanced squad leader stuff, among other things, old gamers line of stuff, will put out. Well, they've got Adam Starkweather, game designer, putting out the Grand Tactical series, and he did Market Garden, the two Market Garden games, and he's done something else, and then the International Gamer series, where I think they take games from magazines from overseas and develop them and refine them and expand them and release them as their titles. But so, but what if you're just getting into this stuff? Somebody that's just stuck a toe into the water of gaming, and what advice is out there for them as far as getting started? Well, I hear a lot about Tide of Iron as far as beginning war games go. And I owned Tide of Iron, and I have to say, I have no reasonable excuse as to why I owned it. That game, no offense to the designers or the game, that game is not one of my favorites. That's putting it nicely, okay? I'm sure there are a lot of people that love Tide of Iron or tired of iron, as I call it, because I am thoroughly tired of iron and its offshoots. Um, my advice, personally, do not go there. And that goes the same for Memoir 44. Bless the designer's hearts. They designed a game, I haven't. But when it comes to Tired of Iron or Memoir 44, you can do better, okay? And when I say you can do better, I mean there is a combat commander. And even on a strategic level, Axis and Allies is still great stuff for beginners. And they also have the D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge. I just played over the weekend Axis and Allies D-Day with my brother, and he was the Allies, and I proceeded to roll probably the best dice rolls I have ever rolled in my life. I don't think I have rolled more ones ever before, and every roll he rolled was a high roll, and that is perhaps a flaw of the game, that it's so dependent just on dice rolls. And if the rules were different, where high rolls is what you wanted and low rolls were bad, he would have demolished me. But I was rolling like a madman and proceeded to throw him back into the ocean, more or less. But there was a ton of games we could play, but that was just something that we could knock out in a hurry and not have to fry our brains trying to keep track of and keep notes on, and you know what I mean. We just wanted to play something, have fun, and be done, and that's what we did. So I would recommend those, and then probably Conflict of Heroes would be my strongest recommendation when it comes to just starting out in this industry. And they have Conflict of Heroes, Awakening the Bear, and Storms of Steel, Kursk was another one. These games are great, okay? And you can learn them, and they are a fantastic introduction into what it's like to play a real war game, you know? So yeah, Conflict of Heroes, I'd highly recommend that if you're just getting into it. So, what do we got left? New releases. Let me get into that a little bit. GMT's The Supreme Commander, I think was supposed to come out, but has been held up with production problems. And good for them for holding up on that and fixing that as opposed to just letting the game ship. Um, I think they've been charging for the Dark Valley, No Retreat, the North African Front, shipping early to mid-November, and I believe France 40 is already out there, has already hit the streets. A game that I was curious about, but as I have the Blitzkrieg Legend, and I'm very happy with that, I highly doubt I will obtain France 40. Let's see, MMP has Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 shipping, and also the fantastic looking Rising Sun module for ASL. I am jealous of this thing. Now, I have Gung Ho and Code of Bushido and no money, so my options are sell those and find the Rising Sun module somewhere, but I think I'll hang on to what I got and just whine. But yeah, that Rising Sun module, the box art is great, and it is a brilliant idea to lump the two together, so you get basically everything you need to play squad leader in the Pacific Theater. So what else? And that also leads me to I wanted to say a little something about these ASL modules. So many of them, as you look, are out of print, and you got to go to eBay and pay an arm and a leg for something, or Board Game Geek, and find something probably just as expensive, if not more so. Um, so I guess what I'm saying is hats off to M&P for slowly but surely making this stuff available again. and look forward to future re-releases of things that have gone out of print. Um, it's frustrating to want to play something and not be able to without spending your son's college money or cashing in your 401k or robbing a bank to get a hold of some of these things and enjoy them. um, let's see, what else? What else? We have got ASL Starter Kit has a historical module coming out, and that will feature 4 scenarios and a campaign game covering the battle between British and German forces during Operation Market Garden, entitled Decision at Elst. And it sounds cool, and I'm glad they're doing it, and I will get that thing. I will do what it takes, beg for change in the street, uh, perform circus acts at the VFW hall, whatever it takes to get some money for this thing because it looks good. And Decision at Elst, for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, you're looking at September of 44, and you got the Allies face up with German resistance near Elst while they are trying to advance towards Arnhem. And it's the area between the rivers that is not easily accessible by tank. So you've got, I imagine you will have dikes and ditches. Now, that might sound like something I didn't say, but dikes and ditches and orchards stood in the way of a rapid advance. And both the Germans and the British saw possession of the village of Elst as the key to success, which resulted in a fierce battle that went on for several days. And I'm getting this information from a site called Exciting History. But it goes on to say that by the evening of the 20th of September, 44, the bridge over the wall in Nijmegen had fallen into Allied hands, and it had remained undamaged, and it was now up to the British ground forces to push on towards Arnhem to complete the last phase of Operation Market Garden. It was 11 o'clock on the 21st of September, however, when the British troops finally started their advance. By that time, the Germans had already set up an ambush to the south of Elst, which the British soon stumbled upon. On the 22nd of September, the British troops marched along the narrow roads to the west of Elst on their way to Driel. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that, Driel. Shame on me for not knowing how to say that. There they joined the Polish parachutists who had landed there on the 21st. During this maneuver, the British rushed to set up their own ambush for the German tanks of Hummel's Schwer Panzer Company, which was a heavy tank company, destroying at least 5 of the tanks. Subsequently, the British troops attacked Elst from the west and liberated it on 26th of September of 44. So that sounds cool. And as I said, I will grab that as soon as it comes out. Of course, almost most, if not any, official ASL product that comes out, I plan on grabbing. I am a completist when it comes to the official ASL catalog, and I am probably 3/4 of the way there. A ton of third-party stuff out. Critical Hit, Heat of Battle. They have some very tempting things, but I'm going to stick with the official MMP releases when it comes to Squad Leader. And what else? You've got Columbia Games has the 3rd edition of Bobby Lee is on Kickstarter. If you have the first one and or the second one and are interested in the 3rd edition, it is out on Kickstarter. Kind of curious that Columbia Games would waste time on a 3rd edition of something and not do something completely new, but hey, I'm not on their board of decision makers, so what do I know? Also available for pre-order from Lock and Load Publishing, you've got Band of Heroes Normandy, formerly known as Band of Heroes Deluxe, which is apparently a complete redux of the original Band of Heroes. And a lot of fans of Lock and Load. There are also a lot of people that just don't get it. I'm kind of in the middle. I think there was an episode of Advance After Combat that gives a very terse view, or review rather, of the Lock and Load stuff. Um, I have Dawn's Early Light and have played that and like it. The counter art is tolerable. The game has just enough flavor to keep it relatively new and interesting. It's a good game. Um, so yeah, Lock and Load. Pre-order for Mare Nostrum is ending soon, and if I remember correctly, that is is it the North Africa stuff? Yeah, the monster, huge, gigantic game covering the Second World War in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Western Desert. So fans of DAC 2, that type of stuff, maybe give this a look. What have I been playing? As I said earlier, Blitzkrieg Legend. And I played scenario 6.3, and that what consisted of moving into Holland in the north. Now, I've started this scenario a couple of times and was unable to finish it for non-game related reasons. But the third time was the charm. And embarrassingly, at least from a German perspective, I ran out of supply. I was about maybe another turn from Rotterdam, which is what I ended up heading for. But I ran out of supply and I was stuck. I couldn't believe it. I was very unpleasantly surprised. And of course, uh, Holland, they were running out of stuff, and so I failed as the Germans to take what accomplish what should have been an easy thing. And I think what the problem was is I tried to do a wide, uh, just a wide fishing net across the whole country and attack everything. What I should have done is just punched a hole straight through and went as fast as I could, just a column in, and hit Rotterdam instead of fanning out everywhere and spreading out. And I think I just ate up supply and weakened myself. So what I've done as a result is abandon that and head to the south. 6.1, that scenario is underway. Significantly more counters in this scenario. Um, Proves to be a pretty interesting scenario. I've got to get some mechanized and panzer units off the board in the west. And also you get victory points for any airfields or minor cities you can occupy. I think I occupied one on my first turn, and I have made major headway towards the west, learning from the mistake I made in scenario 6.3 up north. And I've already praised the OCS rule system for its great mechanics. There's nothing in there that doesn't need to be in there. It's a lot of stuff, but everything that is in there belongs in there and nothing more. I mean, they have really got this down to a science, and it shows. It's a great system, and I really enjoy playing it. I tried to play the Mighty Endeavor, and that is a standard combat system or series. What I've been saying, system series, and it looked interesting. I set it up, started to learn the rules specifics for this game because, as I said, there's the general rule system for all these games, but then each particular game has its own little game specific rules stuff. And I don't know if it's just me, but this game seems so fiddly. Is that the right word? You know, just too much individual things to remember, and you can't do this if you go into this hex, and you got to remember if you're in this hex and you want to do this, well, you can't do that, but you can do that. Just so much of that stuff. I was a page into notes that I had taken, crib notes, so I can remember this stuff, and flipped through a couple pages in and thought, what the hell is the problem? I gave up. It it's a shame too because it looks like a great game, but I am not going to waste my time and my brain space trying to remember so many things for a game that I will play probably one time and never come back to. So I got back out Blitzkrieg Legend and jumped right into Scenario 6.1. And I also have to say that with these games, if you don't know already, go to Board Game Geek if you have a question with the rules or what to do, and go to the forums and ask a question, and I guarantee you somebody will answer. I had a few questions about 6.3 that it got answered, and I had a question about 6.1 right off the bat after setting up that I had a question about that got answered, and lo and behold, the next day I check, and the designer himself, bless his heart, answered the question, and let me know what I needed to do, and that's just great stuff. So, what else? That might be roughly it as far as what I have to say for this episode. I think there may have been some things I left out that I wanted to touch on, but hey, there will be other episodes. I will live to talk another day, and wanted to add that I saw Ender's Game, and the quote at the beginning is fantastic, and the movie is relevant to anybody who enjoys playing war games. Obviously, the outcome for Ender will always ever be more uh, drastic and fantastical than any game we ever play, but you can use your imagination. Good stuff. So, that is what has proven to be the official episode number 1. I hope I wasn't too jumpy and all over the place with the information I provided. I appreciate any and everyone who sits through this thing, and as always, feedback. Give me feedback. What can I do different? Um, yeah, just let me know what's up, and I will adjust accordingly within reason. And so, yeah, thanks for listening. Hexes and soldiers, keep gaming.